All right, let's talk about the Oklahoma Sooners. With Eric Bailey, OU beat writer for the Tulsa World, I'm columnist Garen Emig. Thanks very much for tuning in. And Eric, let's jump right in. And since this is OU football, as much as everyone's excited about the Sooners' prospects for the upcoming season, ranked number 2 in the preseason poll, pretty prohibitive favorite to capture another Big 12 championship, there is the matter of a position that's been hit by all sorts of things. And since you tend, until you see a team play, to think in terms of what can keep a team from reaching its potential, is Oklahoma's running back situation reach the point where you worry at all, or should OU fans be worried about that position keeping the Sooners from reaching their potential?
Garen, I really think it is a concern. And, as little as a week ago, you wondered about that position. Now it's an all-out concern with the news about Trey Bradford, the LSU transfer. I think everyone off guard about him wanting to leave, and it comes on the heel of the report that Marcus Major is ineligible. So you go from 4 to 2 in terms of scholarship running backs, and for everything all the expectations, all the potential of this team, this is probably the most concerning position now. It was concerning a little bit a week ago, but now with only 2 scholarship running backs, it's very concerning. And I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you got to hope those guys stay healthy all year long. And that's a lot to ask about that position and running in Lincoln Riley's offense.
There's a lot of buzz about Eric Gray, one of the 2 running backs they do have, scholarship running backs, one of the transfers that came over from Tennessee, who's expected to provide a big lift at that position. Because of the buzz that's been around Gray, you haven't really landed on Kennedy Brooks, and yet the last time we saw him, he was sort of the go-to guy. He got help from Trey Sermon, his tag team partner, 2 years ago. But we assuming that he's fit again, right, after sitting out last year out of COVID precaution, assuming he's fit again, is he the kind of guy that can, if he's got to pick up the slack and go for 1,500 instead of 1,000, you think he's in position to do that?
I think that Eric Gray and Kennedy Brooks are both capable of doing that. It's just the wear and tear of the position.
Right.
Offense is on the field a lot, and that's a key position. We know how much Lincoln Riley likes to run the football, and I think for Oklahoma to achieve its best success, that's when you have to have that solid running game behind him. 2 years ago, Jalen Hurts, was your leading rusher. Last year, you really didn't get the run game going until Ramondre Stevenson joined the program midway through the season. So that position, the last 2 seasons, we haven't seen it at 100% in what Lincoln Riley wants to do. And just when you think it had the opportunity, this happens. So
yeah,
both of those players are going to be key components. And like I said, just keeping them healthy and keeping them on the field, that's going to be just so important for this Oklahoma team.
Okay, if that's the problem, let's talk about all of the positives, and there are a lot of them up and down the lineup. Where do you start? Is it Rattler? Is it the improved defense? Is it an intangible? Is it something that folks aren't talking about? Where do you land as the biggest reason for there to be a feeling that this could be finally their breakthrough year, at least in terms of not just getting but winning in the playoff?
It's funny, Garen, before the season, when the Associated Press poll came out, I had an opportunity to talk to 4 voters who had Oklahoma number 1 on their ballots and asked them all the same question, why? And all 4 of them, of course, did mention Spencer Rattler. You're looking at a Heisman Trophy contender, a quarterback that, may be the best in the game right now. All 4 of them, mentioned Spencer Rattler, but then also all 4 of them said the improved defense gives them reason to think that Oklahoma could be the number 1 team in the country. I think we're seeing the evolution of Alex Grinch and over the past 2 seasons, entering his 3rd. This defense has really taken charge, and you're seeing what it can do on a game by game basis. And I think with the depth that they have on that defensive side of the football, I think, of course, what you're going to get for the most part with Lincoln Riley's offense. I think it's the defense that gives many of the Oklahoma fans so much optimism going into the year.
And when you talk about the rise of that defense, you really start up front because of, assuming we can call Nick Bonito a pass rusher, guy I think he made as many All-American teams as Rattler, right, in the preseason. Perrion Winfrey at defensive tackle, Isaiah Thomas, a Memorial Charger who really broke out last year, also on the defensive line. Are we missing anybody behind that trio? Is there another breakout? Is there another guy who could not just vie to sort of lead the continued revival of Alex Grinch's defense, but vie for all conference, even fringe All American consideration, or is it really those three?
I think it's those three, but I think the big thing about Oklahoma on that defensive front is the depth. I mean, they can rotate numbers. In years past, you always had 2 or 3 guys on that defensive front that you said those are the guys. But now you have all kinds of names. You have guys like LaRon Stokes, who years past, he probably would have been a star on this. And he may be on the 3rd team of rotation of these defensive tackles. So there's so many different players. You have Josh Ellison, you have Jordan Kelly from Union. It's really good. Now, the one player I think you need to keep an eye on is Jalen Redmond. I think when you look at this defense and you say he could be an All-American, I think we just haven't seen Jalen Redmond have a healthy season, a full season. And of course, he opted out last year. So I think he's the one player who's really flashed so much potential. I think if he gets a full year this year, he could be that guy to join that trio that you named. Mm-hmm. So really high on Jalen Redmond and just keeping an eye on him this season.
And that's another lineman. And isn't it crazy to talk about all these guys at a position that for years it seemed like Oklahoma was just going without, right? I mean, they have a linebacker make a bunch of plays, make a bunch of tackles anyway, might sneak a corner or a safety onto some all-conference teams. But boy, people, it's like when do they get Gerald McCoy, that type of player again? When do they get even a guy like just 6 years ago, Charles Tapper, an impact Eric Stryker, an impact pass rusher around the corner. Well, they've got a handful potentially on this year's team. Back end, the times I've dropped in on interview sessions this month, Eric, it sounds like I've heard a lot about Woody Washington. Is that the guy that people anticipate taking the biggest jump back there, or is there someone else?
I think Woody Washington, man, it just seems like yesterday he was playing LSU in the Peach Bowl and put just a tough position for his first start to go out there and try to cover LSU. So, but he's really grown so much. And you look at him and you look like a guy named DJ Graham on the other side at cornerback. You have Jaden Davis. You got Justin Harrington, who didn't play. We talked about kids that were hurt last year. He was hurt last season, and now you're getting him out there, and he's lighted up at cornerback. I really think he has the build of a safety, though, with how big he is. And that's the one thing that's really impressed me about what Oklahoma has been able to do under Alex Grinch is they've really gotten longer and leaner and faster. You can really tell he's not really looking at that 5'9", 5'10" cornerback. He wants size, and you're seeing a lot of 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" guys back there in the secondary. So I think Justin Harrington's big. And the one player on the back end that I'm kind of curious about, there's 2 players really, and it's that nickel position. Jeremiah Cradell, who everyone's been really high on, and I think he could be the next guy that could, he's going to take the position left vacant by Buki, who left during the offseason. And I think the other player that everyone's really high on, I keep hearing this name a lot, and I'm really curious to see him play, is Billy Bowman, a true freshman out of Denton, Texas. I think he can do a lot of things. He's flashed a lot, and he's a versatile guy who you may see on the punt return team too. So we're rattling off all kinds of names, Garen, in the secondary. And in years past, it's almost like the defensive line. We hadn't been able to do that often, and now we are.
You talked to those voters to put Oklahoma at the top of their polls, and you said it was twofold: improved defense and Spencer Rattler, who is he still the Heisman favorite according to the odds makers?
I think he's up there. I don't know. Yeah, he's up there. He's at least 1, 2, or 3. So
right. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a different way to ask about where he's grown. I've heard the question asked so often, and I've heard Lincoln Riley and Spencer Rattler say so much about how he's better now compared to the last time we saw him in a game. Do you land on some aspect of his improvement that's going to be big for him?
I think he has mentioned the decision making. He's making better decisions with the football. He said he's only had a handful of turnovers, not a lot during fall camp, which he was proud of. And he said they all came in 7-7 drills. And I think we saw that last season. I mean, all we got to do is go back and see the Texas game when he got benched in the first half for some of the back-to-back turnovers. And since that game, since that half, really, he really grew up a lot in terms of taking care of the football. And I think during fall camp, that's what he said his main focus was just being smarter with the football. Now, if Oklahoma, you hang on the football, you're going to score points, and you got that defense that can back you up. So I think that's the key. We'll see what happens with him in terms of protecting the ball. But both Lincoln Riley and Spencer, it sounds like that's been probably the most important thing for him to look toward is just his decision making.
Something that I heard last spring from Lincoln Riley that still resonates with me, I was really surprised to hear it, was we need to be better at receiver. It seemed I remember the receivers doing pretty decent things to help Rattler a year ago, right? To guide him through some growing pains and to make plays in close games. And you look at especially two players the caliber of Marvin Mims and Theo Weiss, two proven productive wideouts to begin with, and then you trickle down the rest of the depth chart. Still a lot of talent there. It was interesting to hear Riley drop that into his spring comments. Is he still going there now that we're in the preseason? And is this a position that has something to prove?
You hit the nail on the head, Garen. I really do think it is a position that has something to prove. I mean, you look at that the history under Lincoln Riley at wide receiver, and you have just so much production out of that. And we really just didn't see that last year. Albeit last year was a little bit of an anomaly. Marvin Mims and Theo Weiss, I think, had 37, or Stogner, I'm sorry, they had 37 catches each. Marvin Mims is going to be a star, and that's going to happen. Stogner, he's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back from last season and being hurt the second half of the season. But gosh, down the line, you look at this roster, there's so many playmakers at wide receiver. The name that comes to mind is a transfer from Arkansas, Mike Woods.
Yeah.
He's going to probably stretch the defenses a little bit. And they're high on him. Mario Williams, Cody Jackson, they're big on those freshmen. And the one player that I think maybe expecting a breakout year is Jaden Hazelwood, another 5-star. He came in when Weiss came in and just wasn't healthy last year, just had limited play as a freshman. I think if he can turn the corner, it's really going to help that offense a lot. So there's so many different playmakers in that wide receiver room that, and one player, I will say this, one player to keep an eye on is Drake Stoops. Drake Stoops, you wondered what his career is going to be like, and he's turned into a very important asset in this offense. So that wide receiver room is pretty deep. Now they just got to go out there and produce.
Stoops, did he not catch the game winner in the overtime against Texas last year?
Yeah, of all people, the Red game. Yeah, he made the big catch in the fourth overtime. So Drake Stoops has had a nice career at Oklahoma, turned into a really dependable player.
I have one question to ask about the offensive line. It's a pretty easy one. Is Andrew Rame going to be is he going to be the replacement for Creed Humphrey at center? What do you think? I
think so. Here's a guy, he only played 60-something snaps last year. He's hungry to play. And, he got moved to center at the last week of spring ball. And really that was a good time because it gave him time to just almost assess things and learn the position a little bit at spring, spend the summer preparing himself, and then he hit in fall camp running. He's smart, he's physical. He kind of resembles like a Creed Humphrey, because remember, Creed Humphrey was a young center too when he took over, and he just blossomed. I really can see Andrew Rame kind of taking that same trajectory. So I'm really excited about seeing him play, and the offensive line overall. There's so many names there. Bill Bedenbaugh, 4 days into practice, he was as confident about this offensive line, as he said. He kept reminding us it was only 4 days, but he kind of saw signs of the 2018 offensive line that won the Joe Moore Award for the best offensive line in the country. So I think he has a lot of confidence in this line too. And that's another group. We talked about the wide receivers having something to prove. I think the offensive line also, they have a lot to prove, and they're going to probably try to use this year to get better.
Again, another metric that people use to rate teams before they've actually played a game, since we don't have actual performance to go off yet, is how the schedule sets up. And this works in Oklahoma's favor, does it not? The non-conference, it'll be fun that Nebraska's back in town, 50th anniversary of the game of the century. A lot of old friends will see each other. I don't think the Sooners will have a whole lot to worry about on the field. I think they're pretty prohibitive favorite to win that game. So non-conference is fine. And they got to go to Stillwater, which is going to be, I'm sure that'll be a friendly place for them, given everything that's happened over the last month. Late in the year, who knows what will happen there? Texas, of course, can get crazy. OU on paper should be a 7 to 10 point favorite. But I'm thinking in terms of just how the poll stacks up. A lot of folks high on TCU. OU hosts them, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, the showdown with Iowa State, a clear number 2 in the preseason. That's also in Norman. And so assuming that there's a full house again at Owen Field, you got a frenzied crowd. worked up for the game of the year. Does it win the game? Of course not. Does it help your cause going in? Yes, of course it does. And so again, if you're looking for reasons to believe, I would assume that we count the schedule among them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think Tulane's a good opener for this team too. This is the first time since 2012 that Oklahoma has opened the season in an opponent's stadium. I know 2016 they went to Houston, but that was at Energy Stadium. But I think this is a good opener for Oklahoma going to Tulane. They're focused. They're ready to play. It's not a pushover game, but they should be 4 touchdown favorites in the same breath. So, and I think, it's funny, Garen, the one game I'm really curious about is going to Kansas State, 1st of October.
I shouldn't have left them out.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at a school that's beaten them twice in a row. I mean, there's a lot of players on this team have never beaten Kansas State. Think of it that way. All these players that played games at OU have not beaten Kansas State. Mm-hmm. So I think that, that's game 5. And after the month of September, after you go through those 4 games, there's going to be a lot of focus on that Kansas State team game going to Manhattan. And then following week, you play Texas at Dallas. So 1st of October is going to be big. And then, you mentioned Iowa State. That's senior day. There's going to be a lot of energy. I assume it'll be a night game. It's going to be crazy. Or maybe 11 a.m. You never know. But I can see that Saturday being huge. And think about it. They end the season playing Iowa State at home. They go to Stillwater, and there's a good chance they'll play Iowa State again in Dallas in the 3 weeks. That's 3 tough emotional games to end the season. So it's good. It's an interesting schedule because the way it'll finish. But hey, that's how November is. It's always a tough game, a tough month for the Sooners.
We heard folks at Big 12 Media Days, feels like a year ago, given everything that's happened since, but it was just a month ago. We heard folks in the OU party talk in terms of national aspirations, right? This is a team that's not backing down from the expectations. It's been 21 years since the last, anyone of an OU angle watching this video knows that's far too long for a program of that caliber. There's some pressure there, and again, just the fact that they haven't won a playoff game, and not only have failed to win, but they sort of have become. Laughing stock's probably too strong a term, but you see Oklahoma in the playoff and you don't expect good things based on past performances. So there's a lot for this. It's a lot for this reason to be optimistic, but there's also a lot to overcome based on history, expectations, pressure, whatever you want to call it. It'd be fascinating to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the expectation factor, I think there's a lot of expectations from fans, the media, and it sounds like inside that locker room too. I think that a lot of them understand that they really do need to take that next step. And I think a lot of people consider the season disappointing if they don't make the championship game at the very least.
Right.
All the tools are in place this year for a good year. Now, you never know what's going to happen with injuries and the running back situation. I mean, even before there's one snap, we're seeing some problems at running back. So a lot of things can happen that can detour you. But right now, going in, the expectation level is so high. And it's amazing when you do think about that. 2000 was the national championship. And when they won that year in 2000, if you would have said, in 21 years, how many do you think OU would have? And, a lot of people would probably say 2 or 3 more. So I think people are stunned that they haven't won one. So I think we talk about a chip on your shoulder for the wide receivers, the offensive line and things like this. I think the overall program has a chip on their shoulder. They have something to prove. So we'll just have to see what happens.
I'll say one more thing about that. When they won it in 2000, I remember fans saying, well, we were way overdue. Fans were saying this. Mm-hmm. It'd been 15 years at the time. And in between the 85 title and the 2000, that was the Gary Gibbs, Howard Schnellenberger, John Blake era, right? But we haven't. This isn't the case here, and so I think there's some justified anxiety, is what I'm saying, with regard to the program and the expectations on this year's team. Eric will be chronicling it every step of the way for us, writing stories from beginning next weekend, New Orleans, and then obviously Norman around the Big 12, perhaps Arlington, and then in whatever bowl or playoff game the Sooners end up in. I know you'll keep tabs on his stories and his thoughts throughout the season. Check him out in the Tulsa World and on tulsaworld.com. Good to see you, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, you too, Garen. You too, and everyone out there, stay safe.